Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, came out with 12 points about the housing situation in this country. One that hit the headlines. What's your opinion on the one that hit the headline, the non-EU tax hike?
Well, obviously, this was typical politicking, right? Trying to get the votes of a populace, but everyone's commentated on that, so I won't provide comments on that. I think it's unlikely to pass anytime soon. However, I do believe higher taxation is coming. I really do. We've talked about governments being in debt, You've got to tax more and typically the haves get taxed more than the have-nots. It's the way of the world. I mean, there are reports in France about trying to create a global taxation system like the US has. So if you're a French national, no matter wherever you live, you still have to pay some taxes back to France. Yeah. So these things are happening. And I think this will probably come to pass in a more relaxed form, maybe not 100% of the property price, maybe 20%, okay? And then you as a buyer will, calculate whether that still makes sense for you.
Well, we do have different tax rates for non-EUs, don't we? For example, for rental. So for example, an EU system will get charged 19%, but a non-EU will get 24%.
That's correct.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I think he said it just to make headlines.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there were 11 other points that maybe if he hadn't have said that, maybe those would have been ignored.
But 2 years ago, he talked about the abolition of a golden visa, probably to make headlines. But look what's coming to pass in April. Things do come to pass. Yeah. So I do believe something is down the road, maybe not to that extent 100%, but definitely more taxation.
Housing is an issue in Spain, obviously, and it's not just in our area. One thing, and I've heard, I'm going to comment a little bit, I've heard a lot of people say, it's damaging for for Spain and the perception outside of Spain. But another thing which is quite damaging is when we see protests on the news, anti-tourist protests or housing protests, which happen every month in different cities. So there is a discussion to be had about housing situation.
Well, look, I am in the eye of the storm because I am in this small town and I sell a lot to foreigners, right?
Yeah.
And I often get locals come to my window, disgusted at some of the market prices of the properties, particularly the beachfront properties, which have doubled in 4 years. It's unaffordable for them. However, the flip side of this is there was a Spanish guy who 20 years ago got a mortgage and invested in a beachfront property. And now some foreigners coming along and paying him a good amount of money for that property so that he can retire. So I'm a big believer, as this whole discussion shows, in investing for the future. So that Spanish man, Juan, he's not complaining about foreigners.
No.
So there's always two sides to every story.
Yeah, of course there is.
I believe if I was in charge, if I ruled the world, so to speak, I would have incentives for young people under 30. If you can prove that you can save money in an allocated account, the municipality will match to a point to get you a deposit for your property. Perhaps reduce transfer tax for people under 30, even for people that have kids, because I believe there's a population crisis. So anything that can incentivize people to have kids instead of worrying about the cost of having kids, I think is a good thing. And housing could be a great way to incentivize that.
And you come at this from someone that lived in Denmark.
That's right, yeah.
And the taxation in Denmark is quite
high. It's 50% tax rate. But we didn't mind paying it because there were so many great schemes. For instance, I have 4 kids, and every quarter I think we got something to the tune of 2,000 euros equivalent, and that was available to everyone if they were a have or a have-not. And so your taxes do come back to you.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to entertain the kids, clothe the kids for winter. It's a great scheme. So you don't mind paying taxes when something comes back. But when nothing comes back,
it becomes a problem.
That's when it becomes a problem.
Exactly right.